Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tim's Drawing Room. We're here this morning because at the time of day I'm recording it, it is morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the channel, the tools I use, all my drawing supplies, my equipment, if you could call it that. And where kind of Zentangle and some of that other stuff comes from, and what a little more in depth as to what my style is. So I've been a sketcher, kind of. I wouldn't call myself an artist, but I've been doing sketches and drawings since I was a kid. And I've always been fascinated also by people who can draw people, which is something I can't do. But one of the things I did like, and I kind of came upon this through technical drafting and architectural drafting in high school, that I like patterns and I like abstract, and I kind of like even a little bit of surrealism in what is out there. So that's what I draw to reflect. I love the Zentangle freestyle doodles. I think those are great. I've been inspired by some of the other folks here on YouTube who do that stuff, who have channels where they show off their skills, and it's impressive and it's inspiring. So that leads me to do what I like doing. One of the things we're going to talk about first, and I'm going to show you a couple techniques here in a little bit, is the things I use to produce my drawings. I'm sure you've seen them if you've watched my videos, even a few minutes worth. I have various stencils and templates in addition to doing stuff freehand. And if this is something you want to do as a hobby, it's relatively inexpensive to get into this. You don't need top of the line stuff. If you want to go that way, that's perfectly, that's up to you how you want to do it. There's no wrong way to do this kind of thing. There's no wrong way whatsoever. First thing we're gonna mention here is paper. These are artists' pads. They come in varying sizes. You can get them at your local art store. You can get them from Michael's. You can get them from Hobby Lobby. They're also available on Amazon in great quantities. But you're looking for kind of a heavyweight paper. And like this sketch pad is by Strathmore. This is one I've picked up some time ago. It's got a fine grain surface, so if you run your finger over it, you can feel a tiny bit of roughness. That helps your markers look a little bit bolder. It helps your watercolors lay nicer on the page. It doesn't soak through all the way like if you were to use copy paper or printer paper, which is perfectly acceptable if all you're doing is drawing. But you should get yourself some decent grade paper and supplies. They come in varying sizes. This is by Loft. It's a relatively, I would say, reasonably priced line of artist supplies. Again, Michael's, Amazon, and Hobby Lobby. And it's the same kind of paper. It's just a little bit smaller. It's a heavier weight than your copier paper. It's got a fine surface on it. And then there is multimedia paper, which is thicker and has a heavier grain on the surface. This Zentangle tile or Tangle tile, they're 4x4, almost cardstock. But if you can see, the texture is somewhat rougher, and that's good for watercolor and acrylic, and it even works for this because, one of my drawings here is on the opposite side. You'll see the video for this one, hopefully a little bit later today. So, be mindful of the paper. If all you've got is copier paper, go for it. But heavier paper, somewhat heavier paper is better. But if you are doing nothing but markers and colored pencils, you don't necessarily want to use multimedia paper, which happens to be a little bit heavier and have a rougher texture, you might want to stick with something a little finer for, and the pads will tell you, you know, they'll come labeled sketch or multimedia or watercolor paper. So you want to kind of stick with sketch, because that will work. That works really well. If you want to go with the multimedia because you plan on using watercolors, you know, go for it. But reasonably priced paper. Strathmore pads are okay. There's some other brands that are higher and lower quality. I don't have a list of them. I have pads by a couple of different brands, but they are not accessible at the moment. Also, when it comes to drawing tools, and we're going to cover those here in a second. All right, so now we're going to talk drawing tools. Those things that aid you in making a picture. It can be as simple as a ruler. It can be as simple as a protractor and a ruler, or just a compass. Or you can get the things that I use, varying templates with different shapes and you know, different shapes, different patterns you can use. This one is one of my favorites. It's got a wave pattern here above at the upper edge. It's got a ruler, which most of them have just as a convenience. It's got varying circles and ellipses, hexagons, squares, and has kind of like a protractor for doing half circles. And you're doing something that you're doing angles on, it can help you measure them. It also has a couple of different arcs in there if you're using those to trace. We have another one, again, more circles. And these are kind of like architectural templates, because you can see some of this stuff, and especially on a couple others, looks architectural almost. But that's fine. It can be used for anything. Another circle gauge with varying size circles. This one is hexagons, more squares, triangles, more circles. And this set, I got this from Amazon. It's a set of 11 stencils for like $12.95, so it wasn't that bad of a deal. You can also find this stuff at any art supply store. And we got some other ones. This one has varying shapes, for whatever you might need it for. This one is more architectural symbols, but again, you know, you've got pattern possibilities there. Same with this one. And I use these to varying degrees. You got one that is all ovals, if you want to include that. And this one, different radiuses, some circles. And they all come in handy to one degree or another, and this is more of the same. But 11 templates for $12.95 was not at all a bad deal. One of the ones I get a lot of use out of is this circle gauge here. I like it because it's thin, it's flexible. This is Artist Loft. I got this at Hobby Lobby. You know, it was pretty inexpensive. I think it was $5.95, $4.95. But it came with some other drawing tools, which was nice. But circles of 2 1/4 inches down to 1/16. So it's handy for because I don't draw circles very well, especially large ones, and that's what I like this for. Now these two are garden and or landscaping templates by Mr. Penn, off of Amazon, I think for $6.95 or $7.95 for the two of them. Again, not too expensive, but they offer some different shapes and different, you know, more circles and stuff like that. But this particularly here, for the brush or the bush, trees and bushes, they're a great flower template for you know, drawing some lines in there and making it look more like a flower. It's the same with this one. Some arcs, evergreen trees, palm trees, you can use part or all of this. Different patterns for different things. And I do freehand a lot, but I also use the tools. Along with the circle gauge from Artist Loft came the triangles, again, for straight lines, things like that, relatively inexpensive from Hobby Lobby and or Michael's, and just some other stuff, some varying curves and patterns, which help a lot, because if you're drawing a big curve, you want to keep it straight and not let it get too out of hand while you're drawing it, and these help a lot in that regard. You got other patterns you can draw inside of them, and things like that, and they're really, really useful, and they're decent quality. You can find this stuff all over Amazon. You can go to Hobby Lobby and Michael's. You'll find the stuff there. Here's a couple more garden and landscape ones that offer more patterns for doing other things. And yes, there's a lot of circles. There's a lot of different, it looks pretty repetitive, but it is helpful. And this is a gauge that will help you draw bigger circles than what the circle gauges offer. This was $5.95 from Amazon by an outfit called Helix. And then a protractor for marking off angles and stuff like that if you were to draw something with, angled lines going out. And I have a compass here somewhere as well. And it's helpful if you want to do freehand. That is all in how you want to do things. And there's no right or wrong way to do any of this, which is the best part about it, because if there's no wrong way to do it, you can't possibly screw it up. So that is a short discourse on the varying tools that I use. We also have this thing that I bought. It's a clipboard, with a clip on it, and you tape your drawing to it, so you're not using having the whole pad of paper underneath you. You can flip it over and use the back side. Stable drawing surface for to tape your paper to, so you don't move it all over the place. It works great. And after this, we are going to move on to the varying markers and things that I use, and we'll get to those here in just a moment. All right, so markers. Everybody sells them, from kids' Crayola markers to fine tip, very expensive drawing type markers, and they are in they are in different quantities and different price points. You can find them again at any art supply store. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. You can get them at Michael's. You can find them, all over Amazon. But you have to be careful, because you do get what you pay for in that regard. Now, there's Prismacolor makes colored pencils. They also, as far as I know, they also make markers. Faber-Castell does the same thing, as does Derwent. Those are the higher end, and if that's where you want to go, feel free. But if you're doing this on a budget, Amazon and Michael's and Hobby Lobby all have varying markers by different companies that are affordable. I use a combination of markers with different line weights, because it just helps enhance the drawing. It helps with texture in the drawing and things like that. I use acrylic paint markers for color, and I have some colored pencils, and I have colored markers here, and we're going to start with your drawing markers, which is primarily what I use. I have several different types, because you can kind of never have enough markers. Let me get all these out here. These are by Sakura, and they're a very good marker. They're reasonably priced. I think for the money, they do a very good job. And they come in different line weights, everything from the thinnest, which is a 0.003, to a and then 0.005, all the way up to, I think, a 1.2. And so the different line weights make a difference in what you're drawing. But the Sakura has a decent dark pigment that doesn't run, doesn't smear, and makes a pretty sharp line. Now, this is a 003. And that's about the thinnest one you're probably going to find, unless some sets have a 0.001. And this is great for fine detail. It's good for making thin lines, for a finer texture and whatever you happen to be buying or drawing, rather. The next one up is a 005, which is slightly thicker, somewhat darker. But you can kind of see the difference there. And the black, even though these are thin markers, it looks kind of on the gray side. It's still it's still going to give you a nice dark pigment on the paper. And the great thing about them is they don't smear. So even after you're done with your drawing, or done drawing your line or shape or whatever it is you have there, running your hand over it or accidentally hitting it with your wrist or something, as being left-handed, I run into that problem all the time. So get some of these put away here. And then the next thickest up is going to be a 0.1. If you give me just a moment, I will get it here. So there's 0.1. This particular set is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.5, and 0.8, all the way up to 1.2, which is the millimeter size of the tip. So if we use a 0.1, you can see the difference now, or 0.01. You can see that you have a thicker line, and the weights, like I said, the line weights, the line sizes make a difference. And if you see, you can see here as I put a line on the paper for each individual marker size. The next one is a 0.2 or 0.02. And then we have the 0.03, and then the 0.05. The great thing about these markers that I'm using too is they have what appears to be a fairly healthy ink supply, which you don't always get that with the cheaper markers. You might be on Amazon or somewhere perusing the markers that they have, and it may be, 60 markers or 40 markers, 30 markers for $12.95, varying types and sizes, etc., etc. But you get them, and you're out of ink in these markers in no time flat. I had a set that did that I purchased off Amazon, looked like a good deal, and I start working with them, and before I know it, they're drying out, they're losing their color, the pigment is not as dark as I thought it should be, and they just didn't last long. I think not even a month. So that's, one of the things you got to look out for is, like I said, you're going to get what you pay for. Now, the last one was a 0.05. This is a 0.8. And already you're seeing the difference from the 0.3 to the 0.8. And then after that, we've got the 1.0. And you're going to see the difference there between the two lines. And other marker sets will have the complete range. They'll have 0.3 and then the 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 1.0, going to 2 in some cases. And they'll have a brush tip marker for shading and things like that, which those come in handy as well for that. Here's the probably one of the last ones. It's with the 1.2. And now you've got a even thicker, darker line, which, again, for texture and things like that, they come in, they're a great thing to have. Now you can use one marker weight, you can use one line weight the entire time if you want. It's, again, it is all how you want to do things. But the variety you can get with doing different line weights and stuff, and altering and varying the texture of what you're doing, that's also helpful. Now this marker is labeled PN. It looks a little different from the others, and I don't have the packaging, so I'm not sure what it's for. But again, it does a nice line, and so we're going to do the brush tip here. Give me just a moment. Okay, yeah, that's all of them. So this is the Sakura markers. A lot of people swear by them. I use them. I'm impressed with them. They do a very good job. They're reasonably priced. I think the set of 12 was $16.95, so it's not too bad. But I have several different sets that I use, and they all have their place in what I'm doing. And besides, having a bigger supply of markers guarantees that if one runs out, you're not going to be left hanging with markers that have gone dead and are out of ink. A brush tip marker, and this is a set that I bought from Amazon. It's not a well-known brand. It's one of the many different brands they carry. They all have a fine tip on one end and the brush on the other. So the brush just, it produces a much darker and thicker line. They come in handy for shading, but you can also, lay the marker on its side. You can do different kind of things like that. If you want to get fancy with your lettering and stuff like that, it helps. It's not exactly a calligraphy pen, but it does the trick. And then there's acrylic paint markers. I have these, one of the sets that I have by Sharpie. Decent set of markers, a little bit pricier than most. The quality is pretty good. They have different tips. There's 12 markers in this set, 12 bullet tips, which is a rounder, fatter, and 12 brush tips. And the color is good. It doesn't really bleed through. You can do varying weights of lines, things like that. It's brilliant colors. And they're good for especially if you draw something with a black background, you shade it in, but you want to add some white accents or gray accents or something else to it. The acrylic markers help a lot with that. And this is the thicker bullet tip, which allows, some varying the line weight and size, but it also is a nice thing to shade with great coverage and nice brilliant color. So this is a good set of markers. Again, available on Amazon, art supply stores, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, all of that. So colored markers, and I do have another set of acrylic paint markers as well. And these are a finer tip. These came from Hobby Lobby's $27.95 for, I think, 24 markers, which wasn't a bad price. The higher you pay, obviously, for the most part, better quality. And again, it's got a nice stable brush tip. It's got good color. Doesn't seem to run, doesn't seem to smear when you're using it, which is always a good thing, because you don't want smears all over your drawing. I ran into that problem pretty significantly at one point. I have two sets of colored markers. One is a set of fine tip ones. This is by Staedtler, Staedtler, a decent company that makes a decent quality product. It's an 03 tip. It's about the same size as this one here. Good for detail. Good for adding color to your drawings. And then I have another set, which I'm kind of split on. Not really sure about it. By Arteco off of Amazon. $38.99 for the set of markers, I think. It's a large set. It's got many colors. It's dual tips, so you've got brushes and you've got fine points. And the colors are pretty decent, but I noticed that if drawing with them for too long, they get a little thin on the color. The brush tip is pretty good. The color is not bad. This is kind of a grass green. And in my opinion, it looks okay. I'm thinking maybe upgrade to a more expensive set of wider tip markers might be in the future here, but you know, budget. So that is an overview of the varying markers that I use. And here's some more black ones. And this is one of the ones with all the tips of varying sizes from 003 all the way up to varying brush sizes and other tips. It's a decent set. They've lasted me some time. They're some of the markers are marked calligraphy pens, which, you know, just means they're like a brush tip like this. I think these were $20 off of Amazon. I got 2 different sets of them. Because you know, you can't have enough markers and you don't want to be stuck running out of ink in one of them. So that's why, you know, the more you pay, the quality is better. So just remember, you're going to get what you pay for with these. Colored pencils, I don't use as much. I do have some kind of miscellaneous colored pencils in here, but I also have a set of them, which I have used. But colored pencils come in handy for shading. So do regular drawing pencils. If you want to shade something, give it a little shadow. Maybe give some depth to your picture. These come in handy for that. And Artist Loft, again, made these pencils, and the colored pencils I have, and they're decent quality. They do the job. They're not going to break your bank. But again, as I've said, if you want to go with the most expensive stuff, by all means. These are by Papiola, which is, again, one of those Amazon companies. You know, the set is sold under so many different names on Amazon. It's kind of hard to keep it straight. It's a decent quality. I mean, you're not going to go too wrong with these. The pencils are sturdy. The tips are pretty soft. The colors, however, could use a little more brilliance, in my opinion. So, you know, but it's all on what you want to do. I mean, the ink, the lead could be a little softer. The colors could be a little bit more brilliant, but they get the job done. Because if you want a decent set of Faber-Castells, you're gonna pay for it. But as would be the case, because Faber-Castell has been making art supplies for many years. So that's the drawing tools I use. That's the markers. A couple of different brands: Prismacolor, Staedtler, Derwent, Sakura, and just remember, the less expensive they are, it might be a good deal, but the less expensive they are, the quality, especially if you get a large set of markers for like $12.95. If they say 180 markers, $16.95, be wary of the quality of that. And you see a lot of that on Amazon. But it is, because it's nice to have a large selection of colors, but if they're not brilliant, the ink is thin, or the colors are thin, and they run out of ink fast, they're not really that great of a deal. So now, to get into the rest of this, we are going to do some of the techniques I use, the varying, you know, markers, some of the techniques I use to do some of the things that I do on the drawings. So are going to get to that next. All right, so we're going to go over some techniques, some things you can practice on your own, some things you can modify to whatever degree you think is good for you. One of the things about doing Zentangle is there's many books that are available. And again, any art supply store, Amazon, probably even Walmart is going to have books like this. This one was given to my wife some time ago by her late sister. But it's The Art of Zentangle, and it shows you the different techniques, how to get started on some of these doodles, and pretty impressive stuff. I've always liked the way, the abstract look of a lot of this stuff. But I also like the precision I get from the circles and the angled lines. So it's kind of a cross between the two. And it's all about expression on the paper. It's all about doing what you feel. And if you're drawing and you want to start a channel like I have, as well as many others that are here doing the same thing, get your inspiration, get your vision, and then draw it how you want. Don't look at something and say, well, is the audience going to like this? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But do you like it? That's where, because when you're trying to create something, if you're running into a problem where what you're trying to create isn't sitting with you the way it should, then you maybe back off a little bit, reevaluate what it is you want to do and how you want to do it, and go for it. But there's no wrong way to do this. It's abstract drawing. It is. I see a pattern. I sit down to draw. I do what comes to me, what I get inspired by. And sometimes I might go a couple of days before any kind of inspiration hits. And then other times I'm sitting here for an hour and a half, 2 hours putting stuff on paper, which makes for less editing when it comes to doing a video. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a couple different things. We are going to take a couple of markers here. Grab this one, we'll grab this one, and maybe this one. Okay, so a couple of heavier weights, one or two, one fine weight. So I'm really bad at drawing circles. Big ones, little ones aren't too bad, but even then they kind of come out looking egg-shaped. And so this is why I use the circle gauge. And I generally start out my pictures with a circle, because circles, in my vision, circles are softer. They're friendlier, if you will. Squares are kind of more rigid and things like that. Triangles are, sharp. And I don't really use, I can't say I don't really use them. I do use them when I'm drawing the angled lines, but it's what's your vision. It's what you feel. This is what I like. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make it look like something, and go for it. I'm telling you, let the creativity flow, because there's no way to be wrong when you're doing this. It's just not possible. You might start drawing a freehand Zentangle. Okay, you might try drawing something freehand, and it's not going the way you want, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means practice. It means build your skills. And the more you draw, the better it gets. Let's just draw a simple square here, and I'll show you what I mean. So a lot of Zentangle practice books have pages marked off in squares, probably slightly bigger than this. But it allows you to practice a single doodle or any other design using whatever you want in a smaller space. So here's one. It's one I see a lot. It's just a line like this, and we can even switch to a finer marker to do the rest of it. But it's just a leaf coming off the stem. And you can use these in many different ways. You can color the leaves solid. You can leave them open like this. You can shade them in. You can dot them. You can stipple them. When stippling is just a series of dots. But you get, you keep doing this enough, and it becomes a smoother, neater looking thing when you're done. but it's an expression of you on the paper. Maybe it doesn't look like mine or doesn't look like this guy over here who does it, but it's you, and that's the part that counts. My wife is a musician, and her music is her expressed through her instruments, and that's what makes her uniquely hers. That's what makes her uniquely who she is because of her creativity and her style and the way she does things. I'm a guitar player myself. She's bluegrass, classical, and a whole range of different things. I am full on distortion, kind of hard rock, not metal, but hard rock driven kind of guitar riffs, because that's what I like. That's what I grew up listening to. I'm Def Leppard and Journey and Loverboy and Rush and Van Halen. And she is some of that too, but she's also a lot of bluegrass. She's newgrass revival. She's a lot of old country, and there's nothing wrong with it. She's just excellent at what she does. I'm learning from her just by watching what she does, and I apply it to what I like to do. So here we are. We got a branch with some leaves, okay? And we can take that branch with some leaves. We can maybe even add another one. And this time it's a little straighter up. But it doesn't matter, because if our drawing crosses over one another, that's okay. You can make some of the shapes, hide behind other ones to give it a sense of depth, or you can, have them all cross over to give it a sense of chaos, if that's what you're after. And that works. So we got these two branches with the leaves, and we can just do some quick lines down here, make it look like a little grass underneath. Do something like that, and that gives the picture a little bit more depth. You can shade in every other leaf if you want. So shade in a leaf here. And you see how the contrast makes a difference between the black and the white. And a lot of times when you're doing this, a lot of artists, and I do the same thing, if you have two similar things like this, you do every other shade in and the other one leave empty, or you shade it all in, or you leave it all white like that, or you do one shaded in and you do one without shading it in, because it all looks it's contrast. And then when you add other elements, like we can put some dots in here, and that fills the picture up. That gives it more depth. It gives it a little character. It gives it a little extra thing for the eye to look at. If you've ever looked at photographs, a good photographer is going to set up his picture to draw your eye to the subject, and not going to fill the photo with too many distractions. I'm a photographer too when I get the chance, and used to be a lot more active than I am now. But my purpose is to draw the viewer's eye to the subject, and you spend a little bit of time setting up your photo. Now, we have a picture with a leaf in it, or kind of a couple of leafy little trees, a couple of vines with some leaves off of them. And we can do another square with another design. So give it a darker outline there. And this one is, and it's something that I see a lot, and I do a lot. You start either at the bottom or in one corner, and then you draw a part of a circle, and you draw another circle, and you draw another one, part of a circle over it, and you start next to it, and you just arc like this. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because if you're noting, it's going all cattywampus on me, which is fine. The lines are wiggling a little bit. The width is not uniform, but that's okay. Like I said, there's no wrong way to do it. Now, you certainly can work on the technique. Nobody's going to fault you for it, least of all me. But excuse me, the more you do this stuff, the more practice you get, the better your drawings are going to turn out, and the more pleasing not only to you, but if anybody decides they're like, hey, I like what you've done there. And see, this is where we start running into problems. But, you know, just fill the whole square up with these. We'll stop here because I want to show you another thing in a second. But you can take the half circles you've done here at the bottom of each one, you can shade them in. And you always, when you're shading, you always want to make sure you get rid of every little white spot that there is, because that helps with the contrast. And honestly, it's like a dead pixel on a computer screen. If you have a little white spot in where it's all supposed to be all black, guess where the viewer's eye is going to go? It's going to go to that white spot that hasn't been shaded over. And, you know, if you've ever had an LCD monitor with a dead pixel, you know exactly what I mean. Because once you see something like that, your mind doesn't want to unsee it. And to some people, that's just a major distraction. It's like kind of doing a photograph where you capture part of the sky and the clouds are what we call blown out, or they're so bright that they kind of take away from the subject, even if the subject is really quite well framed and the color is good. It's just the exposure was set a little bit high, so the clouds, instead of being just white, they're bright white, as if some light is reflecting off of them. And it can be jarring, but you know, fortunately for photography, you have many tools to alleviate that kind of thing. But you can see here that shading in all these parts here gives it a little depth. And you can also, instead of doing circles, you can also do squares of the same thing, or in the same manner, which is also a you know, unique way of drawing shapes, or doing this kind of Zentangle. Like I said, again, I emphasize this a lot. No wrong way to do it. And in this one, we can shade in the outer ring, or the outer edge. And that gives it some depth, a little bit of character, things like that. So you're seeing what I mean here. So there's different ways, different things to draw. One is pretty common, is like the toadstool or mushroom. So you go with a stem here, put a circle around it, and then from the outer edge, because when you do it this way, it looks like the stem is going up inside of it, and you can put a couple of leaves on it, give it a line, maybe shade the stem just a little bit. And then the globe here on top, you can add spots, you can add circles, you can add different shading types, you can do different lines, give them all unique character. You can put them all on top of one another. You can make them look like they come out from behind one another in various places. Another leaf here, and this one isn't working out as great as I wanted it to, but you get the idea. And circles, and filling in the squares, and I want to do another one of the squares to show you something a little bit different. We'll do a smaller one. And this has to do with adding, you know, lines at varying angles to this, to give it, again, give it a texture. And any straight edges work. I like the ones you can kind of see through, because then you can gauge the distance between the lines you're drawing. The narrower the negative space between the lines, the more densely packed it's going to be, the more depth, in my opinion, to the pattern you're going to have. And you can use whatever width you want. So as you can see, you're getting a pattern here, but then what if we change direction and go down this way? And this is where making sure you hold your drawing tools down as firmly as you can so your pen doesn't sneak underneath and mess up the pattern or mess up what you're trying to do. So you just go filling with lines in varying directions. Kind of gives you a pattern, it gives you a pattern, makes it look like the lines are all interleaving with one another. And it's a pattern that draws the eye. People viewing it take a look at that, and it draws them in, and it gives them more to discover, because when you look at these patterns, you start to see other things. And one of the things you can do too is any space that looks a little too wide or won't fit another line, you can shade those in, and it provides a bit of contrast to what you're doing, and enhances whatever pattern you're trying to make, which is pretty cool, which is one of the things I like doing. You can do the same thing with a circle. You can do the same thing with varying lines, curves, lines over long distances. You just got to be, that's where the drawing aids come in handy, because you can keep the line even, and you can keep it uniform, and not like that, but you can keep it uniform, and you can keep it where you want it, and still continue to make it look like something. And that's what I like about all of this. I like the patterns, the interleaving, the lines, the crispness of it all. So let's one or two more lines here, and then that's basically it. And you can even take this one, shade it in, because another line isn't going to fit there. You'd have left it blank. You'd shade it in. So it provides a bit of contrast. Now, different things can be done. Circles, lines, curves. You can even take this particular tool here. We can draw a arc, draw another one. And if you notice, on the right side of the paper, all of the lines seem to come from the same point. And they spread out a little bit as you're drawing, and gives you a nice little effect. Darker, it gives it a perspective. And if you were to say, draw a couple of arcs across it, like that, now it looks like it's kind of being held together. And then you can take this here, draw another line like that, like it's something flowing out of something and hitting, what's below. And then you have this, if you go all the way to the end of the paper, which I try not to do, I try to tape off my drawings. So there's at least, a half inch or almost a half inch along each margin, because then when you're done, and if it looks really nice and you want to frame it, your frame isn't going to cover part of the drawing. But now you have this white space in here, and you can fill it with whatever you want. You can come out of this corner here with a circle. Use something a little bit darker. You can come out of here with the circle, and maybe in a thicker line. So again, contrast. Even take this surface we've put down here, make that a thicker line, because then you're covering up any imperfections where like maybe lines extend a little bit farther than you want them to, like you have here. So now you got a half circle there that's, or fourth of a circle that's really kind of sitting there doing nothing. So then you can come in with your thinner marker and you can either shade it in for contrast or you can add other elements to it, like the everybody's favorite, the pinwheels. And you can put them as close together as you want, as far apart as you want. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. And you just fill it, fill in some of the wider spaces with continuations of the circle you were just drawn. It makes it look like a little bit of continuity, and it kind of puts everything together, and it fills up any space that isn't being properly used. The pinwheels take, they take practice like anything else. They work. Some of them are fat, some of them are thin, some of them are more oval. But the object is to get, space filled up, but you want to do it as appealingly as possible. But again, even though, you've got that going on, you can even put a line here to divide the space, and then just fill this one with circles, little ones. So it looks like pebbles on a beach maybe. Or that god-awful penny type floor tile that you see in bathrooms where it's all those little, anyway. And then to contrast where the pinwheels are, you shade in the area around the circles, being careful to shade in the circles. And then it starts to look like, then you can start to see the contrast in here. One of my favorite design elements, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago, and let me find the thing here. Of course, it's always the case. It's going to be the last one I grab. This one with the waves, I use that fairly often because I just like the way the line looks, and you can put them as close together or as far apart as you want. And and it makes like a water surface or just a wavy line you can do more with. And you can make like angled lines come off each of the top of each wave here. Maybe put a arc in here a little bit. And then you can do whatever you want with that part. We can even take this, join these parts of the drawing together, and then we can do the same thing coming from the tip of each wave or the top of each wave and do a grid going this way. It gives it a little bit of perspective. It makes it look like there's depth to it. And that's what you want to do. That's what I try to do, is try to give what I'm doing a sense of depth. And so you make a grid, and we all know what we can do with a grid like this. We can make it a checkerboard, which again, contrast and depth and things like that. So if you have something like that going on, then you start in one corner, get that first square colored in, and then just alternate in alternate and start coloring in the various squares. And you know, you fill it out and it becomes a checkerboard looking thing, but it adds some character to the drawing. It gives it a little bit more depth. It gives it a visual, gives it a little visual excitement, a little visual variety. And then to even add to it farther, these ends, you can do lines, thicker ones even if you wanted to, going down from the corners where all the points meet here, to give it more perspective. And we can even see if we can line this up and do it, give this wave a bit of a darker shade so it's separate from the other ones, and you can see where one element of the drawing leaves off and another one continues. And we have this line hanging down here, this short one here. We can take the triangle, we can either do an angle this way or we can do this, give us a triangle here, and then you can build off that and go this way. And then you've got more spaces here to fill in with however you want, with whatever you think is going to work, whatever you think is going to look good. And circles, like I said, I can't draw big ones freehand, so I do what I can, or I use the circle gauge rather. One of the things you can do with the circle gauge and these ovals, let's see, find one that's about the same size, is position it and then just do part of the curved line. You don't want to do the whole thing, but when you do that, and you can see how it meets on the distant part of, on the edges, now it looks like it's round. Now it looks like it's a round circle. It has depth now, and you can even, if you wanted to give it the impression that light is hitting it at a given angle, you can even do some shading, or even just some lines like this with a finer marker going along the edge, to give it a little bit more depth, like it has kind of a shadow. And you can still take that same, it would be better if we used an ellipse, but you can also then go from here and you can do a shadow. So, and you can do all kinds of things to play with light and shadow and shading to give it depth. And even do a little shading under the edge of this half circle here to make it look like it's raised up above the surface of the circle itself. And so, you got some shading there. It gives it a little bit of shadow. And the light would be then coming this way, so you don't want that much up here, because the light is coming more down like this, and the bottom part of the circle is going to have a little bit more shadow to it, a little bit more shading. And as you go towards the center, you lighten this up. It's not uniform. You can take another circle and you can do what we did with the square, except using using parts of the circle to do the curved lines. Let's see, there we go. So then you get your circle, okay, so then you move the same size circle and you move it just a little bit, so you can draw the different lines as close as you want them, as far as you want them. So you got like that, and then you can change direction. And yes, sometimes things go awry when I am doing this, but that's okay because, again, there's no wrong way to do it. So then you've got that there, and you can kind of go this way. And then you can even freehand some lines in there if the area is too tight to use the gauge. So now you got a circle with some texture, and then like we did with the square, take the dark white areas or the light areas that are not, the negative space as it's called, that are not going to accept or maybe don't have enough room to put another liner or two in. You can then fill it in, shade it dark, and that gives it a little more depth as well. And it gives it, again, it's visually striking. It draws the eye, gives the eye something to look at, gives the brain something to occupy itself with. Because I find patterns rather interesting, and I can find a pattern just about anywhere. But yeah, then you got something like that, and there's visual variety to it. It draws your eye. It has contrast, and you can do that with varying colors. You can pair red and blue. Obviously gray and black. You can do brown and red. You can do different combinations of contrasting colors that are going to show some depth and some visual excitement. So that is some of the techniques I use. There's many more. I'll probably do some more videos showcasing some of them soon. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming by and watching. That's going to do it for today. And thank you for visiting the page and visiting the channel, watching my videos. I really appreciate it. And remember to like and subscribe. And let me know what you might want to see or see me do. I do have some black paper. I was thinking of doing like a contrasting white acrylic thing on that. That might be coming up soon. But as far as anything else goes, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, simply because it generally hits me in the moment. And one last thing too, storage for equipment. I have recently bought that 6-drawer for marker storage, because I had everything in this old coffee mug and stuck in these rolls of tape in the middle, and just it was pretty gnarly. It wasn't looking good, and it's still chaos a little bit, but that helps. And then I have over here, and I can't turn the camera, I have 2 small bins that I purchased. There they are, from Walmart or from one of the places, Meijer even probably, for holding my paper pads and for holding all of the templates and everything when I'm not working, because I have cats, and cats well, they like to play with whatever they can get their little paws on. So, like, again, thank you for coming by and watching, visiting. Remember to like and subscribe, and there will be more content coming within the next day or so. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you.